This is an age of disruption, of profound revolutionary change.
What we're really asking ministers is to empower the ambassadors.
The only thing that you really push forth is the truth.
You don't see many women represented when it comes to the decisions as to how to handle the pandemic.
Welcome back from the lunch break. My name is Jan Chański, and I'm Politico's Senior Policy Editor, overseeing the teams covering climate, energy, sustainability, and mobility, all the things that we've going to be talking about during the summit. Right now, we're going to look at technology and unleashing technology to reach climate neutrality. Tech offers solutions in things like smart meters and smart grids, which are key to decentralized renewables-heavy power grids of the future. But tech also creates climate problems of its own in the form of energy-sucking server farms. This involves a mix of politics, regulation, and big tech companies. I'd like to thank our partners for making this summit possible. Our leading partners are Coca-Cola in Europe, GE, and SQM. Our presenting partners are Braskem, Cefic, Google, MAN Truck and Bus, Ørsted, PepsiCo, and PGE, and our networking partners are Chiesi and 3M. You can ask questions through the Swapcard platform. You can find the instructions for that on our event website, and if you're on the platform, you can hop on and chat with fellow attendees and ask questions in the question box, which is on the right side of the screen if you're on a desktop, and below the live stream if you're on a mobile. If you're joining us in person, please scan the QR code rotating on the screens to download the Swapcard app and ask your questions, and the screen is up with the app. If you want to tweet about the event, the hashtag is Politico Sustainability. And because the green transition is a systemic one involving more than just politics and economics, we have an art and culture element as well. So we're happy to feature the art of Janina Rossiter, which is all around the venue. Please note that the art is for sale. So if you're interested, you can get some information at our registration desk. And also a reminder that after today's sessions, we'll hold a networking cocktail at 5:55 in the afternoon, followed by a screening of Public Service Media Goes Green, which takes a look at how EU citizens from across the bloc are dealing with sustainability challenges. We're also happy to let you know that in the spirit of sustainability, the little name tags that you've got around your neck are apparently 100% sustainable and impregnated with little seeds that if you stick it into the ground will blossom into flowers. And now on to our first panel. I'd like to ask tech reporter Peter Hick to come up on stage, and he'll run the panel discussion titled Tech and Sustainability, Is it Europe's Chance to Lead?
Thanks, Jan. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Hick. As said, I'm a tech reporter at Politico. The digital transition and the green transition are very much on top of mind here in Brussels. They are the two main priorities of this commission. But the question is, how do these transitions relate to one another? Can new technologies be of help to get to the goal of net zero? But at the same time, the question is also, can tech get in the way of a more sustainable society? Because when you're putting an image into the cloud on your smartphone, that's of course a process that has an environmental footprint. You need data centers, which are using a lot of cooling, and semiconductors that rely on the mining of raw materials. For this panel, we won't rely on tech for the questions, because the questions are here for the audience in real life. And we will, however, rely on tech for participation. As said, you can tweet using the hashtag Politico Sustainability. So we will discuss tech and sustainability with three esteemed speakers. We are joined live here by Adam Ellman, who is Google's head of sustainability in the EMEA region. A round of applause, please. And we are joined online by Francesca Bria. She's the president of the Italian National Innovation Fund, and Lawrence Visser, who's the chief information officer in the Netherlands. Welcome, everyone. Let's start with you, Mr. Ellman, or can I say Adam, if that's
Adam's
fine?
absolutely fine, yes.
As mentioned in the introduction 2 times, we said tech can be a solution, but tech can also be a problem for climate change, because tech companies, they have a lot of infrastructure, a lot of IT infrastructure, which is demanding infrastructure. On which side do you want to see yourself? Is tech a problem or a solution?
Well, thank you for the question, and thanks for Politico for putting on this event. As you've said, this is one of the most important topics of our time, so really important we have events like this to be able to discuss and debate. Look, from a Google's perspective, sustainability has really been at the heart of the business since the company was founded. And maybe if I just frame our work and then come back to your question, we really think about sustainability in 3 pillars. So the first pillar for us is what we call leading at Google. This is very much the question you're asking. But then equally, we think we have an amazing opportunity through our technology to enable others, whether that's our second pillar, which is what we call supporting partners, could be governments, cities, businesses, not-for-profits. But then our third pillar is what we call enabling everyone. We want to help everyone around the world make more sustainable choices. But to your question, it's absolutely right. We have to take responsibility for our infrastructure and for our own business. And we've been doing this for a long time. We're in our 3rd decade of climate action, and we've got some very bold, ambitious goals to make sure we are driving down our impact. So we're focused on achieving net zero. We have a goal to achieve that by 2030. That's both within our operations, so if you're into climate reporting, scope 1 and 2, but also right across our value chain, so scope 3 as well. Now, as a business, we have already matched on an annual basis our electricity with renewable energy. We've been doing that since 2017, and we've done that every year since. So that's been a real focus for us. But while sourcing and using renewable energy is really important, we don't think that's good enough, because it doesn't mean that we're using that energy locally, and it doesn't mean we're using it at the time we actually need to draw on that energy. So we're going even further, and a key part of our net zero commitment is moving to what we call 24/7 carbon-free energy. That means we'll be sourcing locally carbon-free energy every hour of every day, 24/7. We're about 66% of the way there. 2 of our data centers in Europe are at or near 90%, but we're really focused on getting there for 2030. And then more broadly, we have ambitious goals around water, around circularity, all different parts of the sustainability agenda.
A lot of goals are here, so a lot of work on your slate for the next few years. Let's turn to Mrs. Bria. Welcome here. You had this the National Innovation Fund. Of course, when we speak about innovation, I think 2 topics where there is a lot of innovation is tech, is sustainability. But as said, it can be a problem, can be a solution. How do you reconcile both when you're running that fund?
Yes, so good afternoon, everyone, and apologies for not being able to be there with you. So this is obviously a very strategic issue, and you said it in the introduction that at the moment Europe is really pulling, I think, and putting all the instruments in a coordinated manner to reach the goal of decarbonizing by 2050 and become the first continent to be carbon neutral. In order to do that, I think it's critical to have a clean energy supply chain in Europe, so homegrown, and to really unleash the potential for a green innovation value chain. We know how it is important, the deep tech innovation in this sector, because the data tell us that 60% of the type of technologies, the green technologies, the low carbon technologies that we need to decarbonize, 35% will be coming from technology, the potential to decarbonize our economy. And about 60% of those technologies are existing, but they are still in the labs. So they are still at the stage of, let's say, demonstration or prototype. So they're not really ready for the market. They're not really ready to enter into society in all the sectors and to really help us with decarbonization. So we know there are critical technologies such as, the investment in hydrogen, solar, energy grids, decentralized energy grids, but also batteries and chips, microchips and so on, which are absolutely critical. And we also need to lower the dependence that we're having now for critical raw materials, of course, from lithium to nickel, to a lot of other products, components, which are very important to create the industry. Yeah.
That's already a deep dive in critical raw materials, which we will discuss tomorrow, for example. But you used that word deep tech. That's maybe something that for a very climate, energy-focused audience is not an easy word. Can you explain what you understand on what is this deep tech?
Yeah, deep tech is the technology, critical technology, deep technologies that we develop in sectors like, biotech or clean technologies or, quantum computing or microchips or, technologies that need long-term investment. There are about 755 billions, which are invested, for example, in venture capital today in green technologies in Europe. And those technologies need to, they take a long time before getting into the market, but then they can have a breakthrough effect. So they can
this underlines
radically change the way we actually get them into the market and to the consumers and to different sectors.
But this underlines that it's a
very 60%. For example, in our portfolio of startups that we fund, we are a 5 billion fund. 60% of our startups.
Sorry for cutting you off, because I still have to get to Mr. Visser, of course, who joined us a bit later. But this underlined very good how this is a very broad subject. Mr. Visser, welcome, sir. You joined a bit later. Happy that you eventually could join, of course. Because for the audience, we didn't have the minister here. It was a last-minute change for us. We spoke earlier already about the IT infrastructure that you need for powering different technologies, like, for example, data centers. In the Netherlands, there are a lot of data centers because there is a lot of space to actually put those data centers there. I even think there are some Google data centers there. You, as a CIO of the Netherlands, what is your take on this IT infrastructure? What is your overview, and how would you compare the footprint of this still pretty young industry to other industries, like, for example, agriculture, mobility, and others?
Yes, well, thank you for having me here. I'm actually the CIO of central government of Netherlands, so I'm replacing my boss, who is the Minister of Digitalization. I think it's not the space, because we don't have a lot of space in the Netherlands, which is the main reason why we have these data centers and the hyperscalers in particular. It is because of the excellent connectivity we have, also the internet exchanges in Rotterdam and Amsterdam, across the ocean. So my view is that we have two perspectives on making IT greener. So by usage of IT, making a more sustainable environment, but also making the IT being used greener by the usage of the energy, so the power. 94% of the energy being used by the hyperscalers is already green, so by renewable energy. And I also see that we put a lot of effort in making the software development sector more sustainable. So by smart programming, you use less computing power, so then you also have a smaller footprint on the green side. And the same is for storage, for instance. So if you have less data or less duplication or multiplication of data, then you have less storage. So we do that by by regulations, also the competition between the hyperscalers. So there is also within the market a development that they want to become green because it becomes a unique selling point, and in the end, they all want to do this. But from a government perspective, we put this into the not only into regulations but also in the purchasing procedures. So we require suppliers who offer services to government that they are green, or they at least they show that they are making efforts to become greener.
So it's a balance. You mean that there, if we maybe have the perspective from you there, Mr. Elman, it's an industry-led effort, but it's also an effort driven by regulation. And what should the balance be there then?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. I think, at Google, we want to take a leadership position. As I mentioned before, we've been focused on this a long time. It's what we want to do internally, but it's also what our customers and other stakeholders expect of us. I think regulation helps. It helps raise the bar for everyone. We've been very supportive within the EU. In fact, our CEO, Sundar, came out publicly to support the EU, but globally around the world in terms of raising ambition and putting in that regulation to help everyone move faster and get alignment across different industries.
Yeah, and the industry effort or codes of conduct, that's not an excuse to fend off regulation?
I think it's all part of the mix. As I say, I think there are companies that will want to go further, and that's what we're doing. We've set very big, ambitious goals. But as I say, we want the whole industry and all different sectors to take action. I think where we come in as someone like Google is, we want to be an active part of that conversation. So when regulation is coming in, we can make sure it's the right regulation and really will deliver the outcomes that it's hoping to do.
Yeah. Mr. Visser, do you agree with that it's going fast enough? Because in the Netherlands, there's also a lot of protest, for example, from farmers about emissions and these elements. And for example, this summer, a data center plan by Meta was actually rejected and was protested against by citizens. Is this something that because this sounds a bit like really incremental steps, don't we need a big bang to really make that technology and data centers more efficient?
Well, I think, of course, we should focus on making the data centers more efficient, but I think we can benefit more from using IT, like data analytics, like smart cities, like digital twins, to make the society greener, instead of focusing on making the IT itself more green. And I think we need to do both, but in my view, the emphasis should be on the former. And I think we shouldn't confuse the nitrogen problem we have with the farmers, and I agree, but that's almost nothing to do with the data center, because they don't have any nitrogen problem, but that's the CO2, so that's the carbon footprint. And it's a different discussion, but it has I think there is a common denominator, which is the space, because we have a lot of space being used by these hyperscalers, which could also be used for other purposes. And as I said, 94% of the electricity being used by the hyperscalers is green, but this electricity cannot be used for other purposes like houses. And so we have more, but that's not, I think it's not this debate. We have a problem on new housing in the Netherlands, because we need hundreds of thousands of new houses, but it's both the space and both the nitrogen and carbon problem, which poses. So I would say it's good that the industry have their own development, because they are also competing in this respect. But it's also good that we from government, because we are also a big IT supplier ourselves, to our not only to citizens, but also to our own civil servants. We have more than 130,000 of them. So if we, and I think there is a lot to be achieved in this term, because if I mention only the lifecycle management problem we have, so old applications running on old hardware, which is very inefficient. And so if we take on this technical debt problem and do proper lifecycle management, we can also reduce the problems and the environmental aspects of usage of IT.
Okay. Thank you. Maybe let's bring this discussion a bit to the European level. Here we're in Brussels, of course, home of the EU. The EU has set his first steps lately to make technology more sustainable, more durable. There was, for example, this spring the common charger. To make one charger for all smartphones, we have the right to repair, the repairability of devices, and also the data center to make data centers more energy efficient. Maybe Mrs. Bria, repairability, a common charger, these are concepts that activists or maybe people in the streets or all of us are really already asking for a very long time. And then it comes only into regulation really step by step. What's your view on that, and how should you put these activist concept into practice, for example, via innovation?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to say that it's clear this is an effort that requires the partnership which is coming from the government. That is not only regulation. I mean, of course, regulation is very important. You mentioned some regulation in this respect, but take into account that Europe has a very ambitious digital agenda and digital compass now, where, you know, it goes from privacy to antitrust to cybersecurity to questions over data and artificial intelligence, and also to questions that have to do with environmental and social impact of technology. So I think it's a broader issues, but also governments are responsible for large-scale investments to make sure that we can deliver this type of innovation to people. And then you need the companies to step in, which are the biggest companies like the hyperscalers that are there in the studio, but also the SMEs, the innovative startups, people with the mindset, the ideas, and the capacity to innovate. And then you also need, of course, to deliver value to society. And that's the question, I think, that you're asking about what is people perception? And I think I agree very much with what was said before, that we can't focus only on getting technology greener, but how the power of technology is unleashed in society. For example, via smart cities, making sure that we manage data in a way that's more efficient, but also more democratic. People should feel in control of the way data is used, the way artificial intelligence is deployed in society, and then also that environmental impact can be clearly measured, and take into account that not everywhere in Europe we have coverage of connectivity. So if you think we are unleashing like broadband or Internet of Things or 5G technologies, is this going everywhere, or are we leaving behind some regions or some areas? So I think those are very important topics. And then I think you have to see regulation as just a part, which actually shouldn't, they should enable more innovation to happen. So I clearly see that we need more innovation when it comes to clean tech, as I said before, to sustainability and to tech transfer, by the way, because as I said before, a lot of this technology is still in research centers, is in universities, but it's not really transferred in the business, and it's not getting into society as fast as we want. And we are seeing that, you know, the climate change is increasing, and our capacity to adapt, to mitigate is not there yet. And that's where people are complaining, I think. That's where people don't feel maybe the full benefit of this wave of green innovation.
Thank you. If we speak about getting into society, I think there is, well, not a lot of corporations that has a big of a reach as Google, because we all use Google every day. Is there an obligation for a company like Google to educate its users, for example, that a white background, a white Google background uses more energy than a black one? Is that an obligation for you to educate users there?
So I think as Google, we do a lot in terms of, we get to see what people are searching for. And we see increasing searches for, information about how do I recycle, or, how do I save energy? And, particularly searches around climate change. And we partner with organizations such as the UN to try and make sure we're surfacing the most, trusted and authoritative information. And a lot of what we do is absolutely working in partnership with others. And we've done that recently, given the energy crisis in terms of, surfacing up energy-saving tips. So I think absolutely that's one part of where we can play a role. But I do think there's this much bigger opportunity, which the other panelists have flagged as well, is this technology as an enabler. How do we enable cities, governments? How do we enable everyone to take more sustainable, to be more sustainable? And happy to talk you through some of the ways in which we're doing that.
If we make that a bit more concrete, we use that often, that line, tech is an enabler. But if you look at, Google has potentially most of the transformative technologies in-house. We look at supercomputers, quantum computers, AI, all these technologies. Where do you see the biggest impact coming from?
So it goes back to my point earlier. A lot of what we do is starting with our own business, and that's absolutely where we get to innovate. It's where we get to test and we get to develop new solutions. I think in the sustainability space and more generally, we see AI and machine learning as a really big enabler to unlocking some of these challenges. And there was some research out recently by Implement Consulting, which we supported, but similar research by Accenture and the World Economic Forum that identified sort of 20 to 25% of Europe's net zero goals are really going to only be enabled through technology. And just to give you 3 very quick examples about how that's being used in a real world, because otherwise we can make this very theoretical, and a lot of this technology is being used today. So at Google, we provide a solution to cities called Environmental Insights Explorer. Cities have big ambitions, but actually often lack the data to actually understand how they can tackle this. So we've got cities like Dublin who are using the transport data to improve cycling facilities. We've got cities such as London, Copenhagen, Amsterdam using this technology coupled with Street View to look at hyperlocal air pollution. So really enabling cities to take action. If we want to talk about business, we've got companies such as Unilever who are using our geospatial data to tackle deforestation and meet their goals on palm oil. And more generally, if we talk about our work in trying to enable everyone, many of you might use Google Maps. Historically, you've used Google Maps to help you drive from point A to point B, and we would have shown you the fastest way to do that. Recently, we rolled out eco-fuel routing. So we'll now show you the most fuel-efficient way to drive to where you want to get to. It's good for the planet, but clearly it's helping people in, financially as well.
Yeah, and how important is the measurement of all these technologies? Because of course, when you're partnering with cities indeed to push certain technologies or doing that yourselves in certain products, how do you measure the impact of certain actions? I think that's on top of mind at the moment.
Yeah, look, it's super important to us and it's super important to our partners, not least because we do this because we want to have an impact. That's why we're developing these technologies and focus on it. So we spend a lot of time ourselves thinking about that. We spend a lot of time partnering with others, and we welcome efforts by the Commission to do this. But we're also part of groups like the Climate Neutral Data Pact, a voluntary group where we're working in collaboration with Commission, with other players in the industry to try and figure out what these right metrics are. Importantly, we want them to be aspirational. We don't want this to be the sort of the lowest level where people get to, but it should be that aspirational. So how do you measure, but also how do you push the bar? How do we get to the net zero future that we need to get to?
Lately, however, there was some criticism on that climate neutral data center pact because there was there was a feeling that they may be bending the measurements their way to have it their way. What's your take on that?
It's through that group and through the many groups we work with, the information's transparent. We're working closely with many groups on this. So I think, it's one mechanism of bringing the industry together, but, we're working closely with the Commission, with member states as well. So we want this to be something that can be trusted, that can be robust. But to my point, it also needs to be aspirational. This needs to be how do we not set a minimum bar, but drive the industry to where we really need to get to.
Yeah. What's your feeling there, Mr. Visser? Because when you're probably working for a lot of with a lot of big tech companies to get there. In the past, you also worked for some of them, like IBM in a long history. What's your idea about this? How should you work with tech companies, of course, that have a certain interest, a certain stake of themselves in, or a certain profit maybe to get to?
Yeah, well, in fact, you're mentioning the two sides of the coins. Well, to be honest, the big tech companies, they want to grow. So their business model is to grow IT. But our mission is to have it used in the most efficient and also most green way. So I think there are some shared values here, but there are also some contradictory interests, to be honest. So I think it's both. We need the industry because only even from a competitive advantage, they need to work on these green ambitions, because also because of regulations that may become a certified. So if you are a certified green provider, then you have more chance of getting a contract with the government institution than when you have not this certification. But also from the client side, so if I'm looking in the procurement side, we need to ask for these, not only the plans but also for the results of these providers, how they are implementing and making progress on the way to become more green. And so I think we need to recognize each other's interests in it, which can be contradictory, but we also have a common ground because we all need to become more greener because of these overarching ambitions on becoming more green, more sustainable, more recyclable, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Bria, Mr. Visser used the word competitive advantage. At a certain point, of course, green technologies can also be an advantage for Europe to position itself as a leader. When you're running the fund, you of course start from a blank sheet. You have to bring in different perspectives, very multidisciplinary. But how do you get to a certain result to, of course, a return on investment? And how do you make sure that the fund will bring out results and that Italy and Europe becomes a leader?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to say that, of course, there is also an organizational question regarding sustainability, and that I see the entire industry, also the venture capital and investment industry shifting, putting sustainability really, really much more seriously at the very core. I mean, as a fund, we do have a sustainability committee, we have an ESG strategy, we are aligning the remuneration policy for our investment managers to the ESG's goals, and also we look at sustainability risks in our decision-making process. And I have to tell you that this is changing a little bit very deep, the culture regarding sustainability and regarding also the impact throughout our portfolio when we look at low carbon technology and the environmental impact of the technology. And in fact, I just wanted to mention that because you kept saying this is a competitive advantage for Europe. And for example, the Next Generation EU that is the biggest at the moment common investment of the EU countries have 37% of expenditure in the green transition. And we created a fund which is mobilizing in the market 700 million for the green transition and the digital transition, and we see how those two are actually linked. So I have to say, this is really mobilizing the kind of talent and entrepreneurial talent, but also helping SMEs, which is the core of the economy in Europe, because it's not only the big players, to innovate and to introduce those kind of technologies in the business model. So this is important to say also, how do we measure, not only how do we measure the emissions, but how do we measure that we're actually investing and we are aligning with the ESG's goals. This is another very important thing for the market. And maybe also mention the fact that we need to create much more skills in society. I think this is where technology and the technology sectors can really help, which is the reskilling, the upskilling of the population in order to have the right skills and so the right jobs and the right, of course, salary for that to kick off, to really start this green industry in the way we want to see it and in the way I think Europe can lead, because at the moment we understand how we need to align all the instruments and we need to go faster in the decision-making process. So the investment, the subsidies, the venture capital, and also faster decision-making so that we can deliver this kind of value throughout the economy.
Yeah, it's very much a mix indeed. If we speak about investment, maybe recently there was a bit of a fight between the EU and the US on the recent approved Inflation Reduction Act in the US, which goes very much into green industries and the decarbonization of industry. Do you think that the EU is maybe too naive there, or will be outspent nevertheless by the US on that field?
From look, from a Google's perspective, we support ambitious policies around the world, and we've been very public in doing that. We're really focused on the role that we can play in, as I say, driving our own business and enabling others through technology. So that's where we really focus our efforts. And, you know, we work with, you know, member states, with the Commission, and we work around the world. So that's where we're really focused on our effort. I do just want to pick up momentarily on this point about investment, though, because I think it is important that we get investment into for-profit companies. We also see fantastic opportunities coming through not-for-profits and for social enterprises and what have you. And whilst I think, you know, we're really proud of the efforts that and our work at Google, we won't always have all of the best technology and all the best answers. So through google.org, which is our philanthropic arm, we're also putting investment into not-for-profits. We actually have a $30 million call out at the moment for not-for-profits looking at climate technology for climate action and climate information. So we think it's really important we focus on that space as well. We've had lots of successes in that. Just one example is working with a company called Normative, where we provided investment, but also 12 Googlers worked there for free for 6 months to develop a free carbon calculator for small, medium enterprises. So I think that's another area where we're really focused. How do we help that part of the economy also come up with these solutions as well?
Yeah. We didn't really get to an answer on my question, I understand. Let's maybe turn to Mr. Visser. The Netherlands has well, there are a lot of big tech companies in the Netherlands, for example, ASML, which is a chips equipment supplier, also under pressure by the US to maybe limit some of its sales to China. We already said a bit about that positioning of the EU, US on green tech, but also tech. What is your take on that? Should the EU step up also on investment, but maybe also on standing its ground to protect companies like ASML?
This is not only a green topic, but it has everything to do with the sovereignty, because we have, apart from the digitalization of IT and becoming more sustainable by the usage of IT, we have, of course, this wish also on the European level to become more autonomous and have more control over a whole chain of the value chain of delivery of IT and the usage of IT, and this is, I think, mainly has to do with the protection of the usage of IT, especially these high-tech companies like ASML, and that has nothing to do with. It's more an economical and a geopolitical topic than really an IT topic. So my take is, well, in fact, this is not in my portfolio, so I don't think, and even also my Minister in Digitalization, maybe she has an opinion, but this is really something which is being discussed in the full cabinet on the economical level and the geopolitical level. And I think we need this industry, especially in Europe. And I do agree that certain technologies which are very, very high tech, but could also be used for not proper reasons by states for reasons we do not trust. You need to protect it, but I think the only way, especially on the sustainability topic, is to cooperate, not only on the European level, but on a global scale. Because even as a European scale, maybe we have 500 million inhabitants, but there are a couple of billions outside. So if we do our best on the European level, but we transport the problems, in fact, to other parts of the world, then we are not really making any progress on the larger scale. So I think this cooperation and scale is really the key, and cooperation is also by showing the right examples, making these big and celebrate your successes, but also by investing. And I think because we have an open economy and the way we procure IT is mainly, we have the same regulations, the European regulation, as any country. So we cannot simply say we invest something and we leave the rest of the technical landscape, and especially these big providers who have their own big investment on green IT aside. And we can do on the smaller scale. We can do pilots. We can, of course, these innovations. We have innovation funds also in the Netherlands, and innovation initiatives like digital hubs together with municipalities, together with other ministries or big execution organizations. But
I understand that it's very much a cooperation of all the players to protect and really to protect that industry. Maybe to close it off, and I want one word as an answer to my question. What do you think will be the most decisive to really in the technology as an enabler for the green transition? One word.
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence, Mrs. Bria?
The word is technology sovereignty.
Technology sovereignty, Mr. Visser?
Yeah, I would add, because my answer would be artificial intelligence. I think the quantum computing is being a very important part of this transition.
Okay, thanks we keep that in mind, AI, quantum computing, and technological sovereignty. Thanks for that. We now move towards the Q&A, which will be for you here in the audience, on-site only. I want to thank the online audience for tuning in, and for people in the audience here, stay seated for the Q&A. Thanks.
This is an age of disruption, of profound revolutionary change.
What we're really asking ministers is to empower the ambassadors.
The only thing that you really push forth is the truth.
You don't see many women represented when it comes to the decisions as to how to handle the pandemic.
So you know that